Fire Emblem Blazing Sword has some obtuse requirements for unlocking things. And no, I'm not just talking about Chapter 19XX. Don't worry, we'll get to that. Now, having some things be a bit more secret is fine by me. I mean, Genealogy of the Holy War is filled with them. But Blazing Sword's implementation of them really bothers me because they all exist at the expense of what could have been a chance to make the complete package of the game much better. Now let me ask you, what's the most annoying thing in Blazing Sword? If you were to answer with rain and snow, then you'd be correct. Now let me ask you what's the second most annoying thing in Blazing Sword. Hopefully some of you are saying the fact that you have to play through Lyn normal mode, Eliwood normal mode, and Hector normal mode just to be allowed to play Hector hard mode, which as far as most people are concerned, is the only difficulty mode in the game worth caring about. Even if you're okay to sticking to normal mode, you do you, who am I to tell you what difficulty to play a single player game on? There's hardly an argument for playing Eliwood mode unless you really like seizing thrones with Eliwood. Aside from a few differences in starting place and enemy composition, the maps are pretty much the same. But even if they were differentiated a bit more than that, Hector mode has 2 more chapters, 2 more guidance chapters, and 2 more characters to recruit. I guess the devs really hate Eliwood, because there's just objectively more value in playing Hector mode. I mean, he gets Best Girl Farina and Eliwood doesn't. That should be reason enough. So what does this all have to do with the obtuse requirements for unlocking things that I opened the video with? I'm sure some of you see what I'm getting at with this. Blazing Sword has 2 small route splits, Four-Fanged Offense and Pale Flower of Darkness. Let's go over the requirements to unlock both of these chapters. To unlock the Lloyd version of Four-Fanged Offense, 24A, the combined level of Lyn, Eliwood, and Hector must be 49 or less. To unlock the Linus version, 24B, the 3 lords must be at least 50. I don't think I have to say how absurd this is. A good part of this is the fact that there is no indication whatsoever in the story that how strong the protagonists are has any connection to the 2 completely different locations you go to. I'd even be fine with some throwaway line of Hector noticing that Lyn and Eliwood seem to have gotten strong. Something. Anything. But no. I'm fine with 24B being a bit more difficult to unlock because recruiting Geats is a much better reward than recruiting Wallace, but getting the lords to 50 requires just enough extra effort that you could have been actively using the 3 of them for the entire game up to that point and still miss the cutoff. Source: this is what happened in my first playthrough. That being said, my issue here is that there's no way for the player to know without looking it up that there's even a second version of Chapter 24. The annoying thing is that this could have been as easy as listing the chapter in-game as 24A and 24B, but instead we get 2 chapters that are both called Chapter 24, Four-Fanged Offense. I can assure you that there's at least one person who grew up with Blazing Sword and played it half a dozen times and never even realized that there was another version of Four-Fanged Offense. But I guess they gotta sell the strategy guide somehow. Let's look at the other route split now. Chapter 27, Pale Flower of Darkness. The 27A version requires the combined experience gained by your Guiding Ring users, Sarah, Urk, Priscilla, and Lucius, to be higher than that of your Hero Crest users, Dorcas, Bartra, Guy, and Raven. The issue here is very similar to Four-Fanged Offense, where the requirement is arbitrary and there's no acknowledgement of you doing the requirement when you do unlock one of these chapters. These chapters also have even less to do with how you unlock them, because both of them are just some black thing fort with some annoying snow to make the map more tedious. The closest thing I can think of that even resembles a connection is that in 24A you get another Guiding Ring, and in 24B you get another Hero Crest. But that's just me grasping at straws after staring at these maps for a while to write this script. If any of you actually made that connection while playing the game, I don't believe you! But there's another thing just as stupid in this same chapter. You have the chance to recruit either Karel or Harkin based on what you've been doing in the map up until the turn they show up. The requirement is different between the 2 maps, but both of them are stupid and give no feedback to the player that they even did anything. In 24A, Harkin shows up if you've killed less than 2 promoted enemies in the map. Otherwise, you get Karel. In 24B, Harkin shows up if you've opened less than 4 doors. I get that Harkin is the much better of the two units and should be harder to get, but this just might be the stupidest, most obtuse recruitment in the entire series. Say what you want about Hannibal and FE4 and Xavier and Thracia, but at least the story aspect of their recruitments makes perfect sense, even if it's a bit tricky to pull off, especially Xavier. Thanks, Kaga. But what do promoted enemies and doors have to do with Harkin? Does the dude love strong Black Fang members and closed doors? His recruitment conversation and thing he says upon arriving sure don't seem to give any indication of that. And it's not much better with Corel either, who just says some edgy stuff. Now, I'm not sure how it is with 24B, considering I've never played it myself due to the units I always end up using, plus it just looks like more of a pain in the ass. But as far as 24A goes, do you really think that anyone who has only played that chapter on all of their playthroughs has ever recruited Harkin without looking it up? Did they even know that Harkin even existed? I sure didn't. The map is already designed to set you up to kill one promoted enemy toward your quota within the first few turns with that general over there. And with the Purge Bishop causing you grief, you probably want to kill him pretty quickly. You'd have to be playing deliberately slowly in order to not get a second promoted enemy killed before Harkin would have shown up. So what's the challenging part of getting Harkin supposed to be? Play poorly and turtle through the uses of a Purge? And Harkin is supposed to be your reward? Who thought this was a good idea? For comparison, let's talk about the two route splits in Binding Blade. For the Western Isles chapters, it's determined by which of the two houses you visit in Chapter 9. It seems a bit silly on paper, but in execution it works pretty well. You visit one house, the other collapses. The sensible person will think, I guess I can only get one of them. I'll go to the other one on another playthrough. You get to Chapter 10 and see Chapter 10A or Chapter 10B in the name. So while you may not have instantly realized that your choice of house determined the route you took, but the feedback is instant and the player is left with another thing to try when they revisit the game, so they can see the other route. It works well and is a lot more subtle of a way to implement the choice of route split than deliberately asking you where to go, like in Thracia or Sacred Stones. Then there's the Ilia Sakai route split. The implementation here is pretty similar to Pale Flower of Darkness in the sense that it's determined by which units you've been using, but contextually it works infinitely better. You use your Pegasus Knights, you go to their homeland Ilia. You use your Nomads, you go to their homeland Sakai. I won't try to say that the fact that the players making a choice here through their roster choice is super obvious, but you still see that there is an A or B in the chapter name, and the number of units you have to manage toward determining this route split is smaller. So if you're using the right units, it's not a huge stretch for you to make the connection. It's like when they were making Blazing Sword, they didn't look to the things that worked well in its predecessor. And now it's time to address the elephant in the room. The undisputed king of stupid chapter unlocks. Chapter 19XX. To unlock this chapter, there are two requirements. 1. Defeat Kashuna in Chapter 19X. 2. Get Nils to at least level 7 in Lin mode. The former of these two objectives is tedious and annoying, and the latter is tedious, annoying, and really stupid. Let's start with Kashuna. In Chapter 19X, after a couple of turns, Kashuna shows up and a very wide area around him becomes a no magic zone. It's actually kinda neat as a chapter gimmick. On your first playthrough of the game, it's reasonable to assume that you're probably not going to attempt to fight Kashuna. I mean, look at the dudes around him. They seem scary relative to your current power level at this point, but you're glad he's there because he can stop this from happening. Fast forward to your second playthrough. You're on Hector mode now. You've beaten the game once, and you're feeling pretty confident. Those scary enemies surrounding Kashuna are now just free experience. And you might be wondering, what happens if you actually manage to kill Kashuna? Well, let's take a look at his stats. Whoa. He's fast. There's no way you're doubling him, and his avoid is up there. His defense is solid, and he's got a lot of HP. He's not going down easily. Take some swings at him, and resign yourself to needing another turn to kill him. To your surprise, he leaves the turn after he gets attacked. This isn't going to be easy. You're going to need to keep replaying most of the map to get to him and resetting every time you fail. It sucks, but there's gotta be a reward for this. Right? Right? You finally kill Kashuna, and nothing. Turns out you missed another requirement. Turns out you should have bought the strategy guide because clearly you were too dumb to realize the obvious and train Nils to level 7 by the end of Lyn mode. I don't think I have to tell you how stupid this is. Lyn joins you at level 1 in chapter 7, leaving you with 5 chapters to get 6 more levels on him. With play being the only action he's capable of doing, at 10 experience per play, you need to spend 60 turns leveling him up. Assuming you learned anything in your Eliwood mode playthrough, you either reach the incorrect conclusion that you don't really need a dancer, or you're playing much more efficiently now. Lyn mode isn't that hard, and the chapters aren't that long, which is why they decided to waste your time with the rain. So you either didn't touch Nils at all, or you played well and he's got 3 or 4 levels to go by the time you're about to complete chapter 10. Realistically, there's no way in hell any player is going to have Nils sufficiently leveled in time. The only solution is to either play poorly enough that you're naturally giving Nils enough experience, which on a second playthrough you're definitely not doing, or spend an extra 30 or so turns doing nothing but grinding Nils, which is boring and dooms your tactics rank, if you care about that kind of thing. Let's take a moment to reflect on the fact that someone actually thought this was a good idea, and enough people agreed for it to be in the game. It's like they didn't want you to play this chapter. Now consider the fact that this chapter is only available when playing Hector mode. After clearing the game for the first time, you'll be given the chance to immediately select Hector mode and skip Lyn mode when starting a new run. Realistically, a player would look at this and think, let's just pick Hector mode because I've already played Lyn mode. Sure, there's an option to play Lyn hard mode, but I think it's fair to assume that the average player would be more inclined to jump into new content when it's presented to them, as opposed to redoing existing content on a higher difficulty. They really didn't want you to play this chapter. Everything about unlocking Chapter 19XX is designed to be as missable as possible. I'd be willing to bet that there is not a single person alive who has figured out how to get this without looking it up. Were they really so insistent on selling the strategy guide that they had to put content in that players were guaranteed to never see? Let's tie together everything that I've mentioned up to now. FE7 is a game with 2 modes that are near identical gameplay-wise, except for one of them being a much better experience for having more content. FE7 is also a game that has some obtuse and nonsensical requirements for determining its route splits and map unlocks. There exists an obvious solution that fixes both of these problems. Give the Hector exclusive maps to Eliwood as well, and change the route splits to be alternate maps between the 2 modes. Hector mode maps obviously do not need to be tied to Hector. Maybe the devs wanted to make Hector mode feel like a bonus for having played through Eliwood normal mode, but why does Eliwood hard mode get shafted too? Give these maps to Eliwood. Give people a reason to play Eliwood mode. And let's get rid of these silly route splits. Even if Eliwood mode had all of the maps that Hector gets, people would still be complaining that there's little difference between the two. Why not take these silly route splits and use them as an opportunity to differentiate the 2 modes? This is some really low-hanging fruit that easily could have made the game a much better package. I've even thought of a general idea of how this could be implemented. Let's say that Hector gets the Lloyd version of Four-Fanged offense. This is mostly because I think Hector fighting Linus in Cog of Destiny is more interesting. With this setup, Hector gets to recruit Wallace, which can be hardly considered a prize. So let's throw Hector a bone and let him recruit Harkin. The Corel-Harkin recruitment split was stupid, so obviously we're going to split them between Hector and Eliwood too. I don't really have a preference for who gets which version of Pale Flower of Darkness because I've never played the Hero Crest version, but let's just give that one to Hector. Naturally, this means that Eliwood gets every character and chapter that Hector doesn't. This should even things out between the 2 modes. Eliwood has 2 exclusive characters, Geets and Corel, and Hector has 2 exclusive characters, Wallace and Harkin. Harkin is really strong, so whoever gets him is definitely getting the better end of the deal, but nobody said that Fire Emblem has to be perfectly balanced. And of course, get rid of the Nils requirement for Chapter 19XX. Please. In conclusion, Fire Emblem Blazing Sword had some very questionable use of route splits in multiple game modes. There was an easy opportunity to make the game a better overall product, but it felt like they opted for the route that sells more strategy guides. I'm okay with secret or unintuitive things being in games, but they can't be included at the expense of the game itself. Genealogy of the Holy War had plenty of very missable secret things. I played it blind, and I certainly didn't get the Brave Axe or the Pursuit Ring, but the game was by no means unplayable without them. And I still felt like I had a very complete experience with it. And I'm looking forward to playing the game again with those tools available to spice things up. And then there's FE7, which implemented them when they didn't need to. They only served to make Elliewood mode completely obsolete, in addition to being a less intuitive way of doing something the previous game in the series did much better. Why do they hate Elliewood? Why can't this game just be better? So, yeah. FE6 is better than FE7. Hey everybody who's made it this far, thanks for watching. I don't usually make scripted videos like this, and this is the first one I've made that requires any large amount of effort. So, hopefully you all like it. This is a topic that I get pretty fired up about, so leave some feedback down below. What do you think about the route splits in FE7? Are they done well? Am I making a mountain out of a molehill? Hopefully you guys at least agree with me about the whole 19XX being stupid. I was even going to say something in the video too about the Genesis being weird to unlock with the whole Pen to the Desert thing, but that didn't really fit well into the flow of the entire thing, but it was a thought. Anyway, says the YouTuber, I'm obligated to say like, comment, and subscribe. You'll see a route split down below between the like and the dislike button. I recommend picking the like route. It's much better. So, anyway, my name's Garrett. I usually do Let's Plays and stuff, so if you subscribe, you'll get to see when I do those. Hopefully see you soon. Bye.